Cool. So in the example we have here, so this is on the stale while revalidate blog post. Um, you were talking about there's the browser cache and then there's the cache at the CDN level, and uh, maybe we can kind of deconstruct like what we have here. So we have cache control, for example, here. This is for the browser, correct? Uh,
Well, so the cache control header is a web standard HTTP header that, as you said very well, will be understood by the browser. It is still understood by our CDN. So if you
okay.
just decide to, to produce a response that has a cache control header, we will still use that information to cache things at the CDN level. The
Yeah.
problem with that is that it's something that will also be understood by the browser. And by using that single header, there's no way for you to encode different behavior for the browser and for the CDN, which might not be what you want to do.
Yeah.
And so if you look at that example there, you have a header called Netlify-CDN-Cache-Control. And so
Yeah.
the idea behind that there's actually three different headers that you can use. So first one is cache control, which is the standard one. We've already talked about that one. It's understood by
Yeah.
the CDN and by the browser. There's another one called CDN cache control.
Okay.
And the idea behind CDN cache control is that it's a standards based, so it's not part of the web platform standards, but it's a standard that has been adopted by multiple CDNs, including
Okay.
Netlify. And the idea is that you can use that header to encode the caching behavior for your CDN. So your browser will not understand that header, so it'll just ignore it, and it
Okay.
will take precedence over the cache control header, as in the browser flavored cache control header. So that's a great way of clearly differentiating what the browser will use. You can use cache control for that, and what the CDN will use, and you can use CDN cache control for that. There's a
Okay.
third layer to that, which is, in more complex setups, you might
Hmm.
have multiple CDNs involved in serving your request.
Okay.
Um, so you might have Netlify and another CDN in front, and if that CDN also respects the CDN cache control header, then you're in a similar problem as
Oh,
with
okay.
the browser header, because both CDNs will use that header to define the caching behavior, which again might be what you want to do, but
Okay.
it also might not be what you want to do. And so because of that reason, we've introduced a third header that supports the exact same syntax, but that is specific to Netlify, which is the
Okay.
Netlify CDN cache control. And so with this, in a very, super advanced, very complex caching setup, you
Yeah.
could define a caching behavior for the browser, the caching behavior for other CDNs that are involved in your request, and a
Okay.
third caching behavior specific to Netlify. So the idea here is that we give you um, the maximum flexibility in kind of specifying how exactly you want to cache things
Okay.
on your CDN.
Okay, cool. That makes sense. And I guess this question, I'm pretty sure I understand this, but I want to make sure this is also for my own knowledge. But so we have the two headers here right now. So the cache control, like you mentioned, is going to be for the browser, and basically it's going to say after 0 seconds we need to revalidate. So it'll show the cached version first, and then the next request will immediately serve the stale and do a revalidation, but it's the CDN which is the actual cache is, and that's why we always have 0 here as opposed to in the CDN. Is that correct?
Yeah. Excuse me. The idea, yes, the idea is that with like we want the browser, um, you could set, for example, in the cache control header, you could set a max age of, any number that you want, and this
Yeah.
means that your browser would persist that page in its own cache, and it would be fast. Like you wouldn't even leave the browser; it would stay within your local machine, and that would be fast indeed. But the
Yep.
problem with that is that if there's a redeploy of your, in this case, of your Netlify site, and there's a
Yeah.
new version of the asset that is being served on that path, you want to make sure that you serve the updated version. And if
Yeah.
you cache in your browser, then that's not going to happen, because you will not even go to the CDN to get or to ask if there's a newer asset. And
Okay.
so the idea is that you tell the browser to always check with the CDN, and
Hmm.
then let the CDN handle the caching so it can give you the asset in the fastest way possible. So you kind of get the best of both worlds of like always serving fresh content, but doing so in the most efficient way possible.